Hi everyone, and welcome to today's episode. We have Jordan from SaveandInvest UK, who's a personal finance creator on various platforms. And thank you for coming on today. And we're going to hopefully chat about investments, personal finance, and a couple of other things which I think will be interesting for the listeners. So, appreciate you coming on.
Thank you. Privileged to be here.
Amazing. So, I think I like to get started with kind of what originally interested you in personal finance and your personal journey, kind of learning about the stock market. What was it that kind of sparked that interest?
Yeah, so I've always been quite passionate about finance and personal finance, especially like saving money. First of all, obviously earning money and then trying to save it. And just look at things that I can do with saved money essentially. It was up until about, I think, 6 years ago when I discovered the concept of investing. So I initially jumped on like the crypto fad when Bitcoin was at an all-time high. So that was how I sort of got into like, I'd say, a taste of investing, but that was my first real like insight. And it wasn't until like a few years later that I actually started to get involved in stocks and then later index funds. And then I started a page discussing personal finance issues, just because I'm really passionate about it. Really, I've studied accountancy and finance at university, and there wasn't a lot of sort of personal finance education. And I genuinely think in the UK there's not much personal finance education or investing education. So I just wanted to start a page, start a brand to help people become more confident with dealing with their money and starting investing. So yeah, that's sort of my journey in a nutshell.
Yeah, and so you mentioned you studied finance. Is that something you work in your professional career, or are you
So I'm
outside?
literally coming to the end of it. But it is a route I want to go down. I want to go down a sort of financial advisory route. And yeah, that is sort of what I'm passionate about.
Amazing. And would you say you said you started with stocks and then kind of got into index funds? Has your approach kind of changed over time, and do you still hold some individual stocks?
Yeah, I started off sort of picking a handful of stocks, companies that I knew, companies that I used as a consumer, and companies that obviously I was familiar with. So yeah, I began stock picking, and it didn't go. I say it didn't go bad for me, but it didn't go as good as it could have been, which motivated me to go into index funds. But I've still been holding sort of a few stocks. Um, I'm holding Apple and Microsoft. They're my two biggest stocks I've been holding. Um, but yeah, I haven't bought any stocks, any individual stocks in 2, 3 years. I've just been holding sort of a couple. But yeah.
Is that because do you believe it is possible to beat the market, or are you more you're more? I know obviously as kind of influencers in the finance space, like the best way to recommend new investors is always index funds because it's safer. Um, do you think that it it is something that you recommend to people because it is just so hard to beat the market, or
Yeah, I think there's an element of that. Obviously, index investing is quite an alien concept for most people, and I think index funds simplify it a bit more. So I think they're a good entry route in terms of they're cheap, they're easy to understand, and yeah, you can sort of get exposure to loads of different companies and reduce your risk by doing so. But I don't, I don't, I don't know what the word is. I don't look upon people who try to stock pick in a negative fashion. I know that obviously, if people are interested in picking stocks, I know the market essentially can be beaten. Maybe it can't be beaten by most people, um, but I think there's no harm in trying. And if you're someone who actually likes picking stocks and analyzing different companies, then fair play to you. Go for it.
yeah, I think so. I think there is obviously risk, and you have to understand that. I think sometimes maybe there's misconceptions. People think it's kind of a get rich quick scheme. They can invest in one company; it'll, return hundreds of percents. But you know, we know that's not quite true. So, um, Yeah, and obviously with your Instagram page, you get to speak to a lot of people who are kind of just getting into investing. Would you say there's kind of a lot of mistakes or misconceptions you hear from people online about investing?
Yeah, there's a ton. I covered one yesterday actually, which was I often get the question about people asking me, "Am I investing enough?" Well, obviously, I'm not going to be able to tell people realistically what is enough for them, but people are just so sort of worried about not doing the right things, and yeah, because of that, they tend to fall into some sort of key traps, I'd say. Um, and one of the key traps is investing for the first time and then just waiting. I see a lot of people sort of getting into investing, thinking, yeah, I'll try it out, and then just investing and then just leaving it for months, years, just to try and actually gauge their confidence. I say they want to become more confident before they start committing more money, which is fair enough. But I think, yeah, there are a lot of sort of negative stereotypes associated with investing. Um, that, and like I said, it's a bit of an alien concept to people, so people just cling on to the negative connotations, the headlines that stand out. Um, yeah, I think to be honest, with just going back to that point about people needing an education, really, and there's not really an education out there, like a mainstream education where people can go and learn and invest. Everyone who has learned to invest has done it through a different way. Um, but yeah.
Do you think that social media is kind of filling that gap? And do you also see the risks? Because I think obviously some of us who create content, we're not qualified financial advisors. So there is a debate of whether we should give advice or, obviously I try to tell people to do their own research, but what do you think about kind of the financial space online and on social media?
Yeah, I think it's a bit of a there's a bit of a fine line between advising and educating. I'm not sure. I'd love to get more opinions from sort of the higher ups. Do you know what I'm saying? The FCA, etc. People to do with, I don't know, big wealth management firms. I'd love to get their opinion on our pages. Because when I've spoke to lecturers at my uni about my page and about the brand and about what we're trying to do, they're usually quite supportive of it. And one of my sort of wealth management lecturers, she actually spoke to me about this sort of thing, social media, etc., maybe becoming the future of financial advising, financial educating. So I think there's a massive potential for people to hop on board what we're doing, and I think it is quite popular, to be honest. And people, instead of using social media for just to scroll TikTok or watch funny videos, people are actually using it to learn and educate themselves. And I also saw a stat that more and more people are actually buying products and services from social media accounts, which obviously I'd grown up, that never happened with accounts I followed. They never sort of offered products and services, and they never helped educate. It was just all about entertainment. So I think social media is it's a good way to get people thinking, listening, talking about investing and personal finance. Um, but like you say, yeah, there is a fine line, and it's important to try and remain in the education department rather than trying to give financial advice, like you say, when we're not qualified financial advisors. But I definitely think there's a need for what we do, and I definitely think there's a lot of people benefiting from what we do.
Yeah, definitely. And I think um, social media works in strange ways because sometimes it promotes content because it's controversial, because it gets more engagement. So
Mm.
sometimes, like, you want to, if you have a controversial title on your post, it does better. But then you don't want to, some people get quite emotional about when it comes to money and finance, and you don't want to put any of the information which could be taken in the wrong way.
Yeah.
But yeah, so do you think as well, you mentioned like people buying products, do you think as influencers there's something that we can monetize as we get bigger? Because obviously I put a lot of time into my page, but I don't really make any income from it. But I think in the long term, like obviously I think it's fair to get some kind of monetization from the amount of time I put into it. What have you've tried different products before? Is there anything that you've seen that's worked? Is it something you want to invest more time into?
Yeah, so yeah, I've seen sort of products and services work, especially like affiliate links. I think they're quite popular on social media. Um, but yeah, I've only got one product, which is just an investing ebook. And that's done, I'd say, I wouldn't say better than expected, but I wouldn't say worse than I expected. It's probably done about where I envisaged it. Um, and yeah, the plan is to bring out more services essentially, because even though I do have products about sort of learning about investing, I think other people learn all people learn in different ways. So it's just about getting that sort of content in a different form. So I want to be able to work with people like on a one-to-one basis, um, pretty much like over like a Zoom call or something. And yeah, work a bit more closely, put a face to a name, and yeah, try and sort of work to understand people's situation a bit more, as opposed to just handing them generic information about investing. So that's where I see it really. Yeah.
Yeah, I think that's something that I've resisted, is like putting my face on my page for a long time. But I think building the personal connection is what kind of takes you to the next level. So I'm hoping like something
Definitely,
like
I
this
agree.
will take it up to kind of build that relationship. What would you say some of the kind of tips you can give to people to start improving their financial situation, with kind of financial habits and good practices?
Well, mentioned before, when you talk about sort of big personal finance topics, they often become quite controversial. And I think this one becomes quite controversial about how people can better manage money, because people obviously talk about the cost of living crisis and what's going on with energy bills, etc. So it is obviously hard in the current economic climate to try and improve your financial situation. But there are little things, little tips that we can do to improve it. And one of them is budgeting. I've never really been a big fan of like physical budgets, but I've always been a good mental budgeter. So I've always had sort of money left over to save and invest, etc., and have fun, obviously. But yeah, I think budgeting is massively important, especially if you're someone who loses track of money, and I say that politely. Um, but yeah, if you're someone who gets a sort of a few weeks after you've been paid, and all of a sudden you're running out of money, you don't know what you've spent money on. I think it's important to sort of have a list, and make a note of what you're actually spending money on, because the first step to succeeding in personal finance is obviously you need to have the knowledge to obviously make your decisions. And if you don't actually know what you're spending your money on, then you can't really make educated decisions about how to improve it. So I think, yeah, just sort of getting your expenses down onto a sheet and prioritizing them, maybe looking at your goals, your financial goals, your life goals, what you actually want to do and achieve in life, and try and link the budget to that essentially. But yeah, and then the main tip, one tip I talk about often is spending less than you earn and investing the difference. I think everyone who can invest, who is in a position where they have extra money left over, and can save money, I think they should be saving money and investing for the long term. Um, I always talk about saving money is probably best in the short term, whereas investing money is good if you're trying to grow money for the long term. Um, but yeah, they're the sort of two main tips I'd give. Just try and budget as best as you can, and then yeah, try and save and invest for your financial future.
Definitely, and I think budgeting is such a simple thing, but people kind of, because when you look at, like, you take your last 2 months of expenses and you start adding up all the little things you've purchased, and you start to realize that like all these things actually you didn't need, and it makes up quite a
Mm.
big amount actually. So even just having that budget written down can help you kind of with your situation, and prioritizing where you spend money on things that are going to actually benefit your life, prioritizing assets over liabilities. So And when you said about setting financial goals, is there obviously when people are planning on kind of reaching financial independence, how would they go about kind of planning for retirement through using their investments?
Yeah, so I guess again, this is sort of down to personal preference, but when it comes to investing, obviously yourself will know there's a couple of like percentage rules where people feel comfortable taking money out as like a contribution. So there's one, I would say so first of all, I would say if you do want to retire early, then utilize a stocks and shares ISA and utilize a workplace pension, or any sort of pension. I do think those are two sort of key wealth building tools for people who want to reach financial independence or retire early, just because of the benefits associated with contributing to both of them. But like I said, when it comes to investing, there's a 4% rule essentially, which means that you can withdraw 4%, give or take, of your money, and it's adjusted for inflation. And they've calculated using historical data that you wouldn't have run out of money during, I can't remember what the period was, but it's a bigger period. But the 4% rule has come under quite a bit of scrutiny recently, and there's sort of new percentages being formed probably by the day. But the most recent one I read about was a 3% or a 3.3%, which is sort of, yeah, like a 33 of a 33rd of your money. So you could actually withdraw 3.3% or 3% a year, and as I said before, never run out of money, be able to use that each year, and it's adjusted for inflation. But I would say go with what you feel is right. Maybe speak to a financial advisor. It depends on what you actually have invested. It depends what your portfolio looks like. I know that 4% study was done with a portfolio that had exposure to bonds, the stock market, and I can't remember what the other holding was. So yeah, it's important to try and work out what your portfolio is. Your portfolio might be able to sort of cash flow. I know obviously when it comes to like investing in property and stuff, one of the main advantages of that is getting sort of a bigger cash flow. So we're looking at probably a higher percentage in which you can actually receive from your investments each year. So yeah, I think it's important to look at your portfolio, speak to people, and find out ultimately what works for you and what you're happy to do. Because investing is all about risk and reward. It's all about how much risk you're willing to take, and how much reward you want to get ultimately.
Yeah. Are you investing in any other assets other than stocks right now, like things like crypto?
Like the stocks, I've been holding crypto, sorry, since 2017. So I've got a bit, but I have been sort of withdrawing little bits here and there from it. Um, yeah, aside from, I've got some real estate investment trust, a REIT. I've only a small amount invested in that, but yeah, the core of my portfolio is just in index funds, to be honest with you.
Yeah. Do you feel like, I mean, my experience running my pages, obviously I've got to learn a lot about finance, and feel like I've been able to talk a bit more about finance and investing with my friends and family, because a lot of people now are asking me questions, and I'm not an expert, but I do find it interesting, and I feel like I've been able to network with a lot of people. So do you feel like you've been able to kind of talk to people about finance more easily now that you've kind of had experience creating content and networking with other financial creators?
Yeah, definitely. I think yeah, it's helped me also build up an education. I've learnt so much more through social media, and whenever people come and talk to me and ask me where are good places to learn about investing, I would always say following good social media accounts. And you get into a habit then of looking at them on a day-to-day basis. But I definitely think that I've built up a lot of confidence through my own page, and yeah, I can talk to people a lot more confidently about the topic of investing and personal finance. Maybe before, I think I fell into that stigma of trying not to talk about money with people. And to some extent, it is sort of a private issue as such. But I do think that money conversations are healthy conversations, and it's good to speak about your finances, your personal finance situation, and talk to people that are around you, to see how they're faring. I think it's a good conversation topic, to be honest. It's a worthwhile and a beneficial one to be talking about. And yeah, it just feeds back into that thing as well with mental health. So obviously people going through financial difficulty will experience mental health issues. And one of the best ways to sort of combat those is by talking, is by speaking to people, having conversations, understanding people's situation, and then, yeah, trying to sort of benefit each other. But yeah, I definitely think it's helped improve the overall conversation as well, with our social media accounts. I think more and more people are talking about investing. More investing platforms are coming to content creators on social media, with opportunities and trying to get them involved in sort of bringing people to their apps, to their trading investing platforms. So I definitely think it's been a positive for me, individually, but also the personal finance space as a whole.
Yeah, yeah. And have you? I mean, for me, some of the posts which I've had go viral have also had quite a bit of negative comments. People saying things like, "Oh, the stock market's going to zero," and like stuff like that. Have you seen much of that kind of those negative comments? And
Yeah. So with any platform, especially when you get as many followers as you have, Ferg, yeah, I think, yeah, wherever you go, however many followers you've got, you're going to get people obviously talking negative things, saying negative things on your posts, and especially with, like I said, finance, because it's such a divisive, like, personal topic. Some people feel a bit threatened when you start speaking about finances, especially people who are probably have made financial mistakes themselves and have financial regrets. Um, but yeah, I like to I do sort of, although you don't want to see negative comments on every post, it is sort of good to get them once in a while, because it does help you think. Because when you talk to people, you're not always going to get people who are on board like our followers are. You're going to get people who are skeptical and who are going to say things to you, and who are not sort of interested in improving their financial situation for X reason. So I think it's good sort of practice to deal with the people, that aren't so receiving of what we're doing. And maybe in time we can help educate them and bring them into the conversation and help benefit their financial life as well. But
yeah,
I guess, yeah, it's just all part of the game, really.
yeah. I mean, I don't have a problem with people disagreeing or leaving a comment if they want to actually discuss and kind of give their opinion. But it's when the people just come and straight for your throat with their hateful comments, and I just think, like, sometimes I just have to block people especially when a post gets like into the hundreds of thousands of views. There's always going to be a small percentage of people who just don't want to actually have a conversation. They just want to argue. But I do feel like when I see people writing long essays to each other in my comment section, I feel like I've actually done something good, because these two people with completely different opinions are just going at each other, but doing it in a respectful way. That's what I think is important. But yeah, I think there's a few challenges as well for us creators with, the amount of scammers, the amount of DMs I get from people promoting things, like Forex traders and stuff like that. Do you think there's definitely some issues with Instagram? And also we've seen people with legit accounts getting banned for no reason before, which is a bit scary for us as creators. And, we put a lot of time into it. Are there things you see that maybe Instagram could improve on? Because I definitely think it's just seems to be flooded with people who are like creating fake accounts and things like that.
Yeah. I've had my fair share of sort of impersonators, and people sort of trying to clone my account and messaging followers to try and scam them. Yeah, as you said. I think, yeah, social media platforms could obviously probably do a bit more. I know yourself, you're on Twitter as well. I think we don't really see much of that on Twitter. I don't really get sort of impersonators. I don't get people trying to message me and scam me on Twitter. And I'm not really sure why, because Twitter's probably the sort of least regulated social media platform. But it's definitely sort of more open to the freedom of speech thing. So I think, yeah, I definitely think that Instagram, Meta, and TikTok could probably do more to help their users because, yeah, every post, every time I post on Instagram and TikTok, I get sort of a scammy comment. I invested X amount with, and I got thousands of pounds back. And it's just something that's obviously to us, we can tell that it's a scam. But I know that people who are new to social media, new to our kind of accounts, probably won't have that education, won't have that knowledge about scammers and what they do. I get so many messages from followers about people impersonating my account and messaging them. And I've actually, unfortunately, had an instance of someone actually getting scammed from one of those impersonators, which is obviously super serious. In the end, I know it happened to one person, and they managed to get their money back through their bank. And there are some steps that we can take to try and help people if they have been impacted in those scenarios. And I would, encourage if anyone has been a victim of a scammer to either message me or the person who was cloned, essentially, because there are some things we can do. But yeah, as you said, I do think the platforms need to probably help us out a bit more. I think, like verification and stuff is maybe a solution, but I don't want to get obviously too tied up into that. That's for the bigger people at Meta to decide. But yeah, I definitely think that we could do with some more tools at least to try and combat the issue of scammers.
Yeah, it just seems like the Meta support is all automated and there isn't any real people, because the reports just get declined when it's clearly like. And
Yeah.
I do worry about my followers because I can't reach every follower through a post or a story because it only gets shown to a small percentage. But I know these people are DMing. I've had friends and families to tell me that they've been DMing them and having a conversation as if they were pretending to be me, which is really concerning. But it's kind of out of my hands at this point. But yeah, hopefully, like you say, a verification system could help that. We had a question from the audience, which I've asked another guest as well, which is, if you were given 10k right now, where would you invest it?
Okay. So yeah, my answer is going to be super boring. It's going to be, I'm going to put it all into one index fund, and that would be an S&P 500 index fund. That is probably my favorite index right now. And yeah, I've been sort of investing a lot of my money into that. It would probably be split between the S&P 500 and an all-world index, just to improve the diversification, reduce the risk a little more. But yeah, I'd say the S&P 500 index fund, that would probably be my first port of call.
Yeah, would you go all in at once or dollar cost average?
Good question. Good question. To be honest with you, I have always pound dollar cost average. That's always been my tactic. Despite the fact that I've seen few different studies saying that just getting your money in ASAP is probably the most profitable way to invest. But it does just help you reduce the risk. And even though I've been investing for a few years, I do sort of just like to stagger investing. Just because I know there have been times in the past where if you get unlucky and you invest at a certain time, you probably won't see a profit for years. I think there was one time where it took sort of over a decade for you to actually make some profit. We're going back sort of tens of years now, but so I've always spread money over periods of time. So whenever I've had sort of big amounts of capital to invest, I've never sort of invested it at once. I've staggered it sort of over the space of like a year and a half, putting sort of bits in, like equal amounts in every month. But yeah, I think that is for sort of newbies and people who are brand new to investing. I think pound cost averaging, dollar cost averaging probably helps them feel a bit more assured as well. And yeah, it helps build confidence over time through experience. So it's my preference, but like I said, I've got no qualms against people who do lump sum investing and just chuck it in as early as they can.
Yeah, fair enough. Do you have any controversial money or investing opinions?
Yeah, I'd probably say the one I have is, have you ever heard of the efficient market hypothesis?
Yeah, I
So
think I've heard of it.
so I learned about this actually in university, but so this is the hypothesis, the theory that markets are efficient and prices are what they are because of the information available to the public. That there's a theory that these markets are efficient and there's no deficiencies in them. The price is the price for a reason based on all of the information available to people currently. So that sort of takes away the aspect of value investing. So it's sort of, it's a direct sort of contradiction of value investing. Which, don't get me wrong, there are people who have been successful value investors. I look at Warren Buffett. There's a few other notable names. But when I look at people now, and I've got quite a few friends who stock pick, and obviously those were the people that introduced me into investing to start with. But I don't see them profiting more than index fund investors. So for me, I don't think I'll ever go back to stock picking. I believe in the efficient market hypothesis, essentially, and I'm an avid index investor. I'd say that's probably my most controversial opinion. I like to sit on the fence a lot, so that's probably all you're going to get from me.
Yeah, fair enough. And what do you think about the future of? Do you see the S&P continuing to just go up and up? Because obviously there's a lot of people bearish with the state of the economy and the inflation and the amount of debt. But it is obviously like there's a lot of global economic headwinds as well. So do you still see the US economy being strong and confident with that investment?
Yeah, I do. Yeah. I think, as you touched on it slightly there, the globalization of products, businesses nowadays, is booming. I don't think we're really yet to see the true impact of that. I think that is obviously still underway. I think in terms of the S&P 500, although it is an American index per se and the companies are American, there's a lot of global exposure. So many of those companies are in the UK, they're in Europe, Asia, anywhere. So I think long term, I don't think the S&P 500 is going anywhere soon. And it's a bet on America's economy, to be fair. And although obviously America gets a lot of slate, it is the number one economy in the world, or is the top three at least. So I think it's a fairly safe place to wager some money. But obviously that's not financial advice. I have long-term faith, long-term conviction, and that's all. Obviously, you can ask. You want personal conviction and personal faith in whatever you're invested in. And I believe in it. I've done sort of, I'd say, substantial research in the S&P 500. I've looked at it from a financial perspective. I've looked at it from a consumer perspective, and I've looked at it from an investing standpoint. And I do, like I said, I do have long-term faith in it. So I'm bullish long-term about the S&P 500.
Yeah, no, I agree. Do you think there's any other topics you think you'd like to cover?
I would like to ask you a bit about your page and your plans, because you've been growing obviously massively in the last sort of year, 18 months. I just wanted to hear a bit more about you, what you plan to do, and yeah.
The growth recently has been pretty crazy. I mean, we kind of took off. There was one post, and there was a time, I think during kind of 2022 summer, where every single post I did was getting on the explore page, and it was like just going crazy. I think because there was one there's one post that triggered it. It just got so high ranked that it was just drawing more and more people towards the page, and I've kind of tried to keep up the momentum. I think I've kind of got my head around the algorithm in terms of what posts are doing the best in terms of reaching new people. It tends to be all the posts which have a visual style, like a graph or a table or a controversial title, because it's getting the most engagement. But I think there's only so many viral posts that I can design, which is good for getting new people in, but it doesn't really provide much value to my existing community, I think, which is kind of the reason why I thought podcasting is more valuable, because it's long form. And when I create posts which are just text heavy, it just does not get pushed to new people. So I think a kind of audio and then video style content is kind of the future for my page, I think. In terms of products, I just launched my own website, and I've got a few things working on a few things for that. So like more guides, and just things that hopefully will help people out. So like, I've got a investing guide, a budgeting guide, a budget tracker, and a few other things I'm working on at the moment. But I've just started as well, like a separate page on helping people grow their Instagram. So that's something I'm also working on. So I've got quite a few things to keep me busy, and I did quit my job recently just to take a short career break, and also travel. So I've kind of got a bit of time on my hands to try and make it as big as possible, because I think I would quite like to do social media full time at some point in the future. But we'll see how things go and how much success I can have with the podcast, for example. I think, hopefully we can get some good guests on and keep growing it. I know the first, at the start, it probably won't take off for a while, because these things, you have to keep being consistent with them. I remember my main Instagram page, it wasn't until like the 250th post which went viral. So I think I'm on like 650 posts now. So that, you tend to see the people who are the biggest creators are ones that just stuck with it the longest. So I think that's the main thing for me, just keep being consistent. Keep creating more content for people, I think. So that's my main plans. What about you? Have you kind of got a long-term plan for your own page?
Like you said, I just want to keep growing it. Eventually I want it to get to a stage where it does provide sort of a more substantial income. But I like it at the moment. And like I said, I'm trying to get our new service in play by the summer. I've been writing like a new program. As I said, I want to work with people like on a one-to-one basis. So I've been writing a bit more about how like I want to deliver that sort of course thing. And I'm about halfway through. I envisage it probably being ready for the summer. And that's where I'm going to go in the short term. In the long term, I'm not really sure. It's a massive learning journey for me. I've done a bit of sort of social media management before I had this account. So just sort of like freelance roles where I was paid to manage some social media accounts really. But so I've never really grown a page or grown a brand as such. So I'm learning quite a lot along the journey, I'd say, and I'm learning quite a lot from people like yourself and other people who are in the personal finance space. So I hope to learn a bit more in the short term. I hope to obviously release my new service, and then long term, I do want to try and get it to a stage where I could probably do it full time if I wanted to. That's the goal anyway.
Are you doing all of the engagement yourself? Because I always see your name as the first. You're always the first person to comment on any personal finance post that it's almost like you're covering every single page across Instagram.
Yeah, I do. Yeah, I try to. I have sort of set times where I'm more active than not. You won't really see me engaging too much like in the mornings and like mid afternoons, but mid like lunchtime. But like later in the day, yeah. When I first set up the account, I used to spend. I probably. I don't want to. I don't want to say the wrong. I think it was about sort of about 3 hours a day engaging with accounts when I first set up social media, and obviously after a few months, I realized I didn't really need to do that. But yeah, engage is something I've always done really. I do like it. I like coming across what people are doing. I like seeing like what sort of content people are making. And like I said before, I like learning from creators about what they're actually doing in terms of products, services. Are they managing their page full time? Is it bringing a substantial income to them? And yeah, and just trying to get an idea of what people are doing as well, just so I can learn and improve what I do.
Yeah, 100%. I think what I've noticed is the people making like a full-time income are people who are offering coaching. But then I also have, I don't want to give people financial coaching because I feel like that's more going towards a financial advisor, and have to be a bit careful. So I'm still deciding what my big ticket offer will be, because obviously there's only so much ebooks you can sell before, because like a beginner's guide to investing is helpful for people who are new, but then once they've bought it once, they're not going to come back, and people have already kind of learned about investing through other methods. So I think, still kind of deciding what my big ticket offer will be, but at the moment, just focusing on growth. So,
Sounds good.
Where can people find out about your page?
Yeah, so we're currently on three social medias: TikTok, Twitter, and Instagram, all under the same handle, Save and Invest UK. So that's SaveandInvest UK. And yeah, be careful because there are, like I said, impersonating accounts that aren't actually me. But yeah, Save and Invest UK, the same username across all platforms. That's where you can find me. And yeah, my Linktree links are on all those pages.
Amazing. Well, I appreciate having a chat, and thank you for coming on.
Thank you for having me. Been a privilege, been a pleasure. Good to actually finally speak to you. Obviously, we've been engaging on social media for I don't know how many months, years. But yeah, it's good to obviously sit down and have a conversation. Maybe we can do it again in the future.